So I'm going to get started and welcome you all. We all need to acknowledge it's being recorded. And here we are again with our unique kind of setup with my iPad and the thing. So this class is a little more challenging for me because than if you were at the class 2 weeks ago, because I'm going to have to show you things on the screen. And so whatever, we'll figure it out, right? Well, we're all going to do this together. So hi, everybody again. Thank you for coming to address further or once again. What's that? Someone's getting in. Someone's getting in. No, I don't see anybody.
Oh, no, yeah, RJ got it.
RJ, yeah, you'll get it. Hi. So why are we here? Why are we here learning this material? Once again, management and our team leaders have observed that some of us could use some help and guidance in how to run a tighter escrow process. And so this course is going to be about doing just that, running a tighter escrow process. And you might say, oh, Marion, I don't need that. I work with a transaction coordinator. Yeah, that's really nice, but you're in charge. Your transaction coordinator works for you and does for you what you agree with them that they do. They'll remind you of deadlines, but meeting those deadlines and dealing with them if they come up and need to be addressed is your job, right? So that's part of what we're going to talk about today also. And then keeping our clients really well informed is another element of this class, and helping you. I've provided you some materials that helps you do that, right? So this class is actually a CE class that I teach at RAM. It's called a Real Estate Licensee's Responsibilities During Escrow. Oh, that's just what we're here to talk about, right? So I'm going to go through some aspects of it a little more quickly because we don't need to. We're not doing it for CE. We're not, all of that. But there are some things that we're going to go on a little more detail to talk about, to really emphasize. And that has to do with cancellation provisions. Where can your client, the buyer, cancel this contract? And that's really important to know too, right? So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. She says boldly. And I'm going to share this one right here. Okay. And the people move down here again. This is weird. All right. All right. So, like I said, this is called a Real Estate Licensee's Responsibilities During Escrow. We are not doing this for CE. We tried, but that was too complicated with RAM. So it's being offered again in November if you want to repeat. Okay, what's the problem now? Oh, I have to slideshow. Forgot to do that. There we go. Okay. All right. So we don't need to do this. CE doesn't apply. We would ordinarily go do this. If somebody wants to speak up and share, I do this in my classes, right? I ask everybody, what do you want to learn today? Why are you here? Now, Michelle specifically asked us all to be here, so that might be why you're here. But is there something that someone specifically wants to address today?
Yeah, I do. Hi, it's Jeannie. Hi, everybody. I'd like to just review as far as the escrow process, J1, who's obligated, and just exactly what it means. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. I'm not quite sure what you mean, but I'm writing down who's obligated.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if the cell, like, let's say we send the Keller Williams, the J1 inspection contingency approval form, and are the sellers obligated to sign off on it? Or, yeah, so, just understanding that form, what the obligations are, you know, for the sellers and the buyers. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely going to go into that. Good question. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Marion.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Something specific you want to address today? Okay. We're going to go over so much. I think it'll be, we're going to cover a lot. So the course objectives, I'm just going to go over these, even though we're going to focus on more specific things in the course. We are probably going to go over the whole thing. So the idea is to better understand the escrow process to ensure clients are protected and their objectives and needs are met. Ooh, yes. Our clients are protected, right? That's really important. Know how to make certain the contract and timelines are adhered to. That's our job. Improve the licensee's communications to better serve clients and reduce risk, and more effectively manage the licensee's responsibilities to achieve a smoother escrow process. Nothing wrong with those goals, right? We could all use some of that. Okay. That starts us out with fiduciary responsibility. And you go, Marion, really? We got to do this again? Like, yeah. I can't tell you how often I think about what is my fiduciary responsibility here. So it's really good to know this little acronym. So old car, right? It's an old car. Can anybody tell me, what does O stand for? No. Good. That was, somebody said, what's your name?
Venu.
Venu?
Yeah.
Venu said obligation, and I said, no, I'm afraid that's not the answer. Anybody else? What does O stand for in fiduciary? Say
Obedience.
obedience. Exactly. Obedience. This is the word we take out of the marriage vows, right? We don't like this word. And yet, in recent times, I have found that this very issue comes up a lot. It comes up a lot. And what I'm finding in people is that people want to make decisions for their clients, or people want to like act right away. So they call me up and they say, here's what's happened. What should I do? I go, you need to go talk to your client. I don't know what you should do. Your client needs to decide what you should do. If you want to talk about what are some alternatives that you could recommend to your client, we can talk about that. But it is not up to us to decide what you should do. Or if somebody says, I'm going to go call some so-and-so and do this, I go, did your client approve that? Like, I'll give you an example. I have a buyer that I've been working with, and they are potentially interested in another property. And the listing agent of the property that they bought said to me the other day, Marion, you should call that other listing agent and let him know that your clients are interested, so that, you can be aware if he's got somebody coming in. I don't have a right to do that. I went to my clients and I said, would you like that? Would you like me to do that? Here's the pros and cons of doing that, right? If you do that, we have a good chance of being told in advance that somebody might be interested in this property, and we could then, you could then go in and make an offer quickly, right? On the other hand, my experience in real estate has been, you put energy on a property and it gets energy. And you let somebody know that you've got clients interested, he's going to use that with other people and say, well, I have other people interested in the property, right? It creates energy. So I want to have that conversation with my clients. I don't just call that agent and say, oh, by the way. So my client said back to me, thank you for reviewing that with us, and let us give it some thought. And so they're thinking about it. So it's my job to obey. It's my job to always ask, what would you like to do? Right? To always confer with my client, not to decide for them and simply act. That's a lot on just one letter O, right? But that word, that's what that word means. Another one is, if our client wants to do something we don't like, people call me up and they go, oh, my client cooperating and they want to do this and they, this isn't right. I go, well, yeah, but that's the way it is. So our job is to let them know what are the alternatives, what are your options, what could you be doing? But if that's what you want to do, okay. And, I had a wonderful conversation with somebody real recently about the spiritual aspect of real estate. And you're going to go, oh God, where's she going now? So the thing about real estate is the level of ups and downs we experience. Those ups and downs are sometimes what drive us, right, to want to act and want to do something. Oh, my client is being totally unreasonable. I should just, I should just do this. So pay attention to when it is you who want to do something versus like, whoops, my job is to talk to my client and get my client to agree. Right? And yes, you'll feel the low of my client doesn't want to offer more. My client wants to cancel the contract. My client wants to, whatever the thing may be that makes you sad, sad. Yeah. So over time, you build this muscle of not getting so attached, right? And so that's what I mean by the spiritual aspect of real estate is we grow this ability to hear news that isn't so great, that we don't really want to hear, and differentiate from how we personally feel versus this is my business and my job is to represent this person and do the right thing. So it's a wonderful, wonderful aspect. All right, L, enough about obedience. What does L stand for?
Loyalty.
Yes, loyalty goes right in hand, right? Who are we loyal to? Are we loyal to getting the thing closed? Or are we loyal to our clients, right? We are loyal to our clients. Awesome. D. Exactly, disclosure. And I just took my core B class, which is about misrepresentation, right? And it's all about our obligation to disclose. We do have an obligation to disclose whatever we know, right? Whatever I hear. Disclosure here is an interesting one in terms of escrow process. What happens sometimes in escrow process is people get, hot under the collar, and we might get an email forwarded to us from the other client that just is like outrageously angry. My job is not to forward that email. My job is to write a new email and to present the, let's say, seller's position and say, dear Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I unfortunately must tell you the seller is quite upset as a result of the questions we asked. And here's what I propose right now. Obviously, I'm going to call them because just telling them in an email isn't as effective, right? So communicating and disclosing to my clients the thing that happened, but I don't need to forward that nasty email because that's really gonna, right? My job is to tone everybody down, right? Get everybody calm. You want to call me up? You want to vent? You can say, Marion, I'm calling to vent. I go, okay, go. You got 2 minutes, right? And then we're going to talk about what can we do next, right? So disclosing. We need to tell our clients what's going on, and yet we need to disclose it in a manner appropriate. C, what's C stand for? Confidentiality. Yes, thank you. Confidentiality. The place where this is obvious is as we're working with our clients, we don't go around talking about our clients, right? We don't go around saying much. As a matter of fact, in some of the documentation we're going to go over today, you're going to see that I recommend your clients not post all over social media what house they're buying or what's going on. It leads to trouble. It's better to keep your business confidential until it's all done. And our job is to keep their confidences. Where it gets a little difficult is once they've bought something and they've moved on, and I don't know, maybe they end up listing with somebody else and now you represent a buyer and you know something about those sellers because you represented them as sellers. You can't talk about them. You can't, you still are obligated to that confidentiality, right? We can't say, oh, those people have a lot of money. Don't worry about it. I know because I helped them buy before. Can't do that. Right? Or you come into the office and you say, oh, my listing was like fell out of escrow. I'm so bummed. And somebody else says, oh, what happened? Oh, the buyer didn't qualify for the loan. Can you do that? No. So help each other, right? Because we are in this moment of being upset and say things. But if you hear somebody say that and you go, ding, 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 I don't think she should say that. You might go like, I don't think you should say that. And I'll forget you said it, but you might not want to say that, right? Yeah, help each other. A, what does A stand for? Yes, accountability is good. It actually stands for honest accounting. Ooh, honest. The word honest is actually in here. So accountability, being honest, right? Telling our clients exactly what's going on, telling our clients exactly what's happening, letting them know all the way along what the process is and what's happening. I know agents sometimes call me and say, oh, we got this survey and there's this encroachment and all my clients are going to be so upset and whatnot. I said, when did you get this survey? And they go, yesterday. I go, so what did your clients say? Well, I haven't sent it to them yet because I don't know what to say. I feel so they're going to get really upset. So here's the lesson. Your clients are all grown up. Your clients are adults. Your clients know they're buying a property. And you can let them know there's an encroachment here. And I've got an appointment with my broker in 2 hours. And we're going to talk about this. And I'm going to come back to you and tell you all of the options you've got in regard to that encroachment. So don't not tell your clients what's going on because you're afraid of their reaction. You can just say, I'm just the messenger delivering the survey to you. Let me get back to you with some good options for you here. And in the meantime, you can think about what this means. And if you need guidance on how to read your survey and how to understand it, absolutely get with your broker, get with your coach right away to understand. If you're not familiar with surveys, let me know and I'll be happy to send you a few so that you can take a look at some surveys, right? That's probably a worthwhile exercise. Because you go, what does it say? It gets very detailed, right? All right, accountability. And R.
Marion,
Yes.
quick question. As far as surveys go, is there always an accompanying report, or is it just, can it just be the survey of the property?
So for the most part, we understand the box that says survey to mean a map.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, thank you.
And then there's a letter that says, I'm a licensed surveyor and I have surveyed the property. And a staking has no map.
Yeah.
Right. There's a little discrepancy about that because the paragraph that says survey actually says a map will only be provided if there are improvements near the property line. So we have had incidents where a seller says, there's nothing near the property line. I don't know you a survey. I don't know you a map. So sometimes you might want to reiterate that or make sure that the listing agent understands that you're asking for a survey and clarify that. But a survey, generally speaking, generally it means to all of us a report, a map will be included.
So if you're given a map without a report, should you follow up with the other side, with the seller, the listing agent, please?
Well, there is no report. There is a cover letter.
Cover letter. Okay.
So you should get a cover letter from the surveyor that says, I've done a survey, I certify that I've done a survey, and the map is attached.
Got it. I appreciate it. Yeah.
In his letter, or in their letter, they are going to describe whatever encroachments they found.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Marion.
All right, that takes us to R. What does R stand for? Reasonable care. It's that funny word, reasonable care, right? We are held to a higher standard. So to a judge, when he says, what can I reasonably expect of these professionals who earn a lot of money selling houses, what can I expect of them to be their reasonable level of understanding of real estate? Should it be higher than what I expect of the buyers or the sellers? Yeah, right, obviously. So that's where it comes in. It's up to the judge to decide what can be reasonably expected of a professional real estate licensee. Cool. All right. So, oh, it's a lag. So what's our job? And this is where I ask everybody in the class when I do this for CE to unmute themselves and to read that blue line together 3 times, because that's your job. What does it say? Everybody together. To assure
The deadline adhered to.
Deadlines are adhered to.
one more time. To
To assure the deadlines are adhered to.
I don't know how to make it any clearer. Your job is to make sure that your client doesn't miss a deadline. Your job is to know when the deadlines are due and what the consequences are if they don't meet a deadline. Right? So we're going to go over some of that today. But that is, I mean, if we all just did that, that would be like awesome. As brokers, right, we are getting calls from people saying, oh, I didn't realize there was a deadline. Oh my. Yeah, oh my. And no, it's not your transaction coordinator's job. Let me make that clear. This is not your transaction coordinator's job. They help you. They can be incredibly helpful by reminding you and sending you things and helping you sign waiver forms and all of that, but it's not their job. It's your job. It's our job to make sure our clients perform on time and do not risk going into default on the contract. So what do we do? Well, we're facilitators, aren't we? We oversee things and we arrange and schedule. We listen and we educate, right? We listen. Listening is a great skill. People love to tell us. And then we go, yeah, I understand. I know just how you feel. I've had that happen to me too. Let me share with you some experience I've had, and educate. We attend, we go to inspections, we go to all sorts of things, and then we follow up, don't we? We do a lot of follow-up. We're problem solvers. We are paid to think things through, right? Somebody just called me yesterday and said, oh my God, we're having troubles with the loan because the bank wants assurance that the cesspool is in compliance until 2050. Huh? What? So we brainstormed, how can we get this done? Right? We didn't have an answer. I didn't have it. We don't have weeks of time to bring an engineer in and have an engineer inspect. It's already been inspected by Valley Isle Pumping. What can we do? So we brainstormed. The agent and I just got together and we thought about what could we do here? And we decided to call the Valley Isle inspector and see if he would put something like that in writing. I haven't heard back from her, so I'm hoping she was successful. So we think things through. Right? We take our time to address an issue because we are problem solvers. That's what we get paid for, to problem solve the issues, right? Yeah, communicate calmly, right? I mentioned that before. That's a big part of our job, calmly. Take your anger out on your dog and your cat or your spouse or call your broker and vent, but talk to your client calmly. We provide choices, we provide possibilities, we give our clients the options, the pros and the cons of doing it this way versus that way, right? Yeah. We consult experts, and somewhere on the bottom there, it says we consult our broker. So I just want to remind everybody here that we are here for you to call us and ask questions. It is not for you to have to worry about, oh, Marion, I know you're so busy. I hate calling you. No, 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 no. Your job is to call me when you need me, right? Same with Keone. any of the brokers, your job is to reach out to your broker. I call myself a doctor on call. That's what I call myself. I'm like a doctor on call. I just, whenever somebody calls me, I need to be there. So I try to carry my phone with me wherever. People who work with me know I like to walk in the woods in the afternoons. But other than that, I try to be available. Yeah. So we need to consult experts and consult our brokers. All right. Knowing our purchase contract, read it often. Now that I don't mean, take the contract and go and sit and read it. When you're in escrow and you've got a question, the first place you go is your contract. Read the paragraph that you have a question about. What does it actually say, right? It'll answer so many questions for you. We use templates, right? We use templates when we fill out a contract. Practice not using a template sometime. Do a test, like just do a practice contract and fill it out without the template, and ask your broker to review it and say, this is my practice contract. I didn't use the template. I'm trying to see if I get it, right? Because what you'll see is you'll go like, oh, darn, how do you fill this in? Shucks, what does this say? And that's going to make you have to read the contract. So that's the beauty of filling it in without using the template, right? Yeah. Like I said, read it when something comes up and always ask your broker. All right. So contingencies. What is a contingency? Contingency.
In a loan?
They are the what ifs.
Oh, that's a good one. The what ifs, right? They are the clauses where somebody has to do something and perform, or the other person has a right to cancel. Or it's a contingency that says, I have a right to do certain things. And if I don't like what I find, I can cancel, right? Those are contingencies. So who's got them in the contract?
Mostly the buyer.
Mostly the buyer.
Both, right? Both. What are some sellers' contingencies and obligations? Survey. How about starting with right up front? E3 is, I think it's E3 or E4. Inclusions. Is the seller obligated to provide a list of inclusions within, our template says 7 days? And then does a buyer have a right to cancel if they don't like them or if they don't get them on time? Yeah. Or how about delivering earnest money deposit? Did you know that a seller can cancel if your buyer doesn't submit the earnest money deposit on time? Right? These are important things to know. Like, these are contingencies. They have to be met, right? So, yeah. And what's our job? What's our job?
To ensure the deadlines are adhered to.
She gets candy. She gets a prize. Make sure the deadlines are adhered to. Exactly. That's our job. So what if something is due tomorrow and you don't have a decision yet, right? First of all, our job is to anticipate. I believe Chemo Stone teaches the 5 and 2 rule. 5 meaning 5 days before the end of a contingency period, you should notify your client that this contingency is about to be due. And in 2 days, I'm going to come to you and ask you to approve it and sign a document to that effect, right? So, and then at 2 days, you contact them. And why at 2 days? Well, because you built in a little cushion just in case your client is, at the beach and not available and doesn't get back to you until the next day or something. So, yeah. So if we see that our client isn't going to be ready, how do we extend, right? What do we need to do? We need to anticipate. Oh, this isn't going well. My client isn't answering me. I better say to my client, we need an extension here to allow you to make a decision with a little more time. Would that feel more comfortable for you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, right? And draw up an extension. So how do we do that? An amendment, right? Really simple. Just an amendment to the purchase contract, and you just reference whatever the paragraph is that you're extending. And you just say, what does it say here? Reference J1 inspection period. Notice, by the way, how I do that, right? I'm in an amendment. I number the item. I say reference the paragraph I'm referencing and the title of the paragraph. For those of you where I'm your broker, you know what I'm talking about. This is like my pet peeve. For those of you who don't work with me, your buyers and sellers do not know what J1 is or N1 is or whatever the paragraph is. They haven't got a clue what you're talking about. So it is just common courtesy that both buyer and seller know what they're signing. So now it says J1 inspection period. Buyer and seller hereby agree to extend the J1 inspection period by 5 days to February 15th. Right? So that's an amendment.
Marion?
Yes, dear.
Yeah, so let's say you have another document, let's say the seller's real property disclosure. Would you then call that amendment number 1 to the seller's real property disclosure?
If you're amending the disclosure, if you're either the buyer or the seller amending the disclosure with newly discovered information, yeah.
So yeah, the reason why I'm asking that question is because I was thinking about, should the amendments be sequential, or they are only sequential when you're referring to the same document? Is that correct?
That is correct. They would be, if you had another amendment to the purchase contract, it would be amendment number 2.
Mhm.
You then had an amendment to the seller's disclosure, it would be amendment number 1 to the real, right, seller's real property disclosure statement.
So thank you for that clarification. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's how we do that. I should say that we also have a form in my KW in the office forms called a contingency extension. You could use that. You could use that. It requires both buyer and seller signature, which means it amends the contract, right? And that's what's needed. And an amendment requires both buyer and seller signature. The value of using an actual amendment form is your broker is now aware of what's going on, and it involves your broker a little bit because your broker is going to have to sign this. Okay. What if you miss one? Has anybody here ever missed a deadline? Don't raise your hand. You'll be too embarrassed. No, yeah, it happens. It happens. Aaron, we can all blame it on buyers who just refuse to make a decision and refuse to sign documents and went AWOL on you and whatever else. There's all sorts of circumstances that come up, but it does happen. So what do we do when we miss a deadline? Here's what has to happen. We need to fix this problem right away. So we need to call our client and we need to fess up, or we need to make it really clear. You are now in default of this contract and I don't want you to be there. So I would like us to fix this and just extend this particular contingency. So we get their decision and their approval to go ahead and do that. We write the extension, the amendment. We call the other agent and we ask for their cooperation, right? You need to call that agent now and go, oh, I can't believe what we just did. We just let this time expire and I'm so sorry. My client has been blah, 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 and I've tried and I got distracted and whatever else. You'd make your case, you plead, right? And you try to get the other agent to cooperate. Now, here's the thing. If everyone wants the process to go okay, you're okay. If there's a backup offer for $15,000 more, you might have lost this deal. So when we miss a deadline, we are totally at the mercy of the other party to now either cancel or let us continue. So oftentimes the right to cancel isn't just a one-day right, but is a day like 5 days long if it's an 03 termination provision, right? Nobody wants to have those hang out there. Nobody wants to not close this loop, right? This open gap. So in no matter which termination provision applies, So it is advisable to do an amendment. And if the parties agree to get that extension. Is this clear to everybody? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, we, you know, this was a dangerous time with all these multiple offers and backup positions and whatnot. These last couple of years have been a dangerous time for missing deadlines and yeah. All right. So let's talk about contingency waiver forms. Do we require them? Does Keller Williams require contingency waiver forms?
Yes.
Yeah, right, we do. Yeah, like, can you get your file closed? Will Rob close your file if you've got a J1 approval form missing? No.
Oh,
Right. Yeah. Does the purchase contract require them?
Yes.
No.
No.
Isn't that interesting, right? The purchase contract does not require contingency waiver forms. So why do we use them? What do you think is the benefit of contingency waiver forms? Do you know what I'm talking about? J1 approval, survey approval, M1 document approval, forms that we ask our clients to sign that say, I approve of this and I agree to move on with this transaction, right? That's a contingency waiver form.
You have proof that they had agreed to it, not just let it pass by.
Can everybody hear that? On
No.
Zoom? She said,
No.
that it's proof that the person agreed to it and didn't just pass by. Exactly. And it's also an opportunity to hopefully like wake your client up, because when we're asked to sign things, most of us go like, sign, what are you asking me to sign? Hopefully. And that we go, I'm asking you to sign, you are waiving your right to this inspection. In other words, we're saying this is done, we're done with it, and you're willing to move on with the transaction. You do not want to cancel. Is that correct? Oh yeah, that's correct. Okay, great. Listen. So when you do that, right, when you actually have that kind of a conversation with your client, it's like, wake up, be alert. And now you can say, remember, we had this conversation. I said to you, this is where we move on. And you sign this document. So yes, it is client management as well as cover your KOA, right? Yeah, that's what it's good for.
Marion?
Yeah.
Yeah, you had mentioned about the J1 contingency approval. So on that form, so the buyers would submit it by the deadline, of course. Must the sellers respond? Is it a requirement for the sellers to sign off on that?
So if it's simply an acceptance and a waiving of the contingency, technically no, because that is the buyer's right. The buyer is just saying, I'm moving on, nothing else.
Mhm.
If the seller is saying, if the buyer is saying, I want the seller to repair the hot water heater,
Mhm, mhm.
you think the seller needs to sign that?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go. So
Yes.
as a result of that, you wouldn't want to wait until the last minute, right? If you've got some repairs that you're requesting or a credit that you want from the seller, you're not going to leave that to the last minute. You're going to use your form, you're going to list what's going on, and you're going to ask the seller to sign and agree to these 3 repairs that the buyer is requesting.
Now,
Right.
what if, thank you for that. Now, what if you're just requesting a credit, a minor credit in dollars in the amount of X? Do they, if the sellers don't sign off on it,
No credit.
no credit? So it's okay then if you don't receive a response, given that the listing agent has sent that document to the sellers, but if you don't receive a response, then you can assume that they're not in agreement with your request.
Yeah, and you have nothing in writing, and I'm assuming the J1 deadline expired. And as it says at the bottom of J1, Once the deadline expires, the buyer has waived their right to cancel this transaction.
Yeah. Now that brings up another interesting question, because if you've met the deadline, but then the other side said, well, I cannot get this document to my clients because even,
So, Jeannie,
yeah,
you have not met your deadline if you don't have the other party's signature on it before the end of the period.
I see.
Remember what I was talking about, the 5-2 rule.
Okay.
Notify your clients 5 days in hand, right? So on a J1, we all try to get our inspections done within 10 days. So as to give our clients 4 days to decide what to ask for and to submit a request for repairs or credit. And give the seller a couple of days to think about this, or a couple of days of negotiating. So chemo rule is 5, start that at 5 days. And then at 2 days, if you don't have an answer, you might ask for an extension.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Play it safe. Don't go until 5 p.m. the day that the J1 expires and go, Marion, what do I do now?
Yeah.
A little late, because the seller does the seller have to grant an extension? No, right? So you might as well know about that 2 days in advance. Seller will not grant an extension. Seller isn't answering. This is where good relations with the other agent really help. Talking to them, what's going to happen is your seller just not responding. You go back to your buyer and you say, you know what? Seller's not responding. We can anticipate the seller not signing this document. Therefore, the only choice you have is to either go ahead with and take on those repairs or cancel. That's the conversation to have with your client. You don't go and go, oh, the seller's not responding.
Of course.
Yeah, there's a reason the seller's not responding. They don't want to. So it's up to the buyer. If the seller isn't responsive, buyer can decide what they want to do. Nothing in the contract requires the seller to make any repairs, to give a credit, or to extend the contingency period.
Great. Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Okay, all right, what's next? So again, here we've got the J1, right? A sample of a J1 inspection waiver form. And and we're familiar with our own, right? Ours is a little more complicated for those transactions with a loan, and those transactions without a loan have a more simple form. So a buyer can either opt to accept the findings of J1, or this form says proceed and accepts the findings of with J1 with agreed upon repairs as outlined below to be completed by the seller by, right, whatever that, or the terms of J4 shall apply, right? So ours says something similar to that, just different wording. Another contingency waiver form here is a multiple form for preliminary title report, for staking and survey, for termite report. I don't recommend using this form for documents. I recommend using the form in zip forms for documents. It allows you to check the actual documents that your client got, get a receipt, and then have them sign that same form as approval of those documents, right? It's a great form. Also, our Keller-Williams form in office forms is great for documents. So, but these, is it okay if you have your client take the title report and you just put their signature on the front? Would that be okay? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, same thing with the survey. You could type in the word approved, right? On e-sign, you can say approved and add their signature. And now you've got their signature right on the document. You can totally do that. Okay. That takes me to communication, because it's so important. And, you know, it's such a blessing when people have good communication with their clients as well as with the other agent. And it just really makes the transaction so much smoother, right? So be aware, talk to the other agent about, texting versus email. And an important element here is I see so much happening via text. And we tend to be really brief and quick on text, whereas you could move the conversation over to email because you can do email on your phone just as easily. And I tell my clients that up front. I'm going to move when it's about the transaction and it gets a little more detailed, I'm going to move that conversation to email because I need to have record of our conversations and be able to find that again easily. When I see people doing text, we tend to talk too quickly. We tend to just, quickly answer back. In an email, we get a little more thinking about this, right? So consider that. It's also a lot easier for you to track your correspondence and find where you or your client said something, right? So keep that in mind. Obviously, texting is easy. I'm going to come do a showing on Tuesday. Is that okay with you? Or did you get my email? I just wanted to double check. Yeah, I'm not so crazy about what you said. Okay, please answer in my email. Letting the client know that you need this. This is a business transaction and you need it to be an email is helpful. And obviously, making phone connection with people, just really, really valuable. So that, it's like, well, who said it the other day? Somebody else has said about going to the installation luncheon. Some people went to the installation luncheon and you can, say, hey, I saw you there. It was so nice to meet you there, right? Like when you actually get to know some of the other agents in the community, it's just great. You just never know who you're gonna work with, right? So give them a call and say, hey, I'm looking forward to working with you. And I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. I've been around for 20 years and I live in Haiku and I have a grown son and I love to walk in the woods and go to the beach and I love to read. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? And they'll be a little startled, like, whoa, and you go, well, we're going to work together. And it would just be nice to at least say hello. So give that a try. All right. That takes us to the 3-step communication process. And the purpose of it is to help your clients feel at ease and confident that you are in charge, right? Everybody remember their first escrow. And if you haven't done an escrow yet, even better, because the first time I started in real estate and I heard this term escrow period, I'm like, what is that? It was like this black hole, like I just didn't have a clue, right? So I went and got myself some experience. And after you do your first escrow, you're like, oh, that's what that is. But you had no idea. Well, imagine how your clients feel. Even if they did a transaction 20 years ago, do they know everything that's involved today? No, right? They're like first-time home buyers. People who do a lot of real estate, okay, they have a better understanding, right? But it really, really helps. So I've got these 2 documents that I gave you, right, that we sent out to you. And these are my gift to you for taking this class. They are Word documents, and you are free to put your own name, logo, whatever on them and use them. So here's what they're intended to do: to help your client understand and feel comfortable during the escrow. So you set the 3-step communication process into action upfront in person. It's a great way to connect with your client and do a touch, right? An actual touch. Sometimes it's by Zoom, whatever else. You can email it to them and say, I just want to meet with you quickly and go over this. Then you review the overview with them. Then step 1 might be meet with the first 2 days once your transaction is accepted, and give specifics of the first 2 to 3 weeks, because those are the most intense, right? Then at the at the end of that 2-week period, you do step 2. You meet at the end of that inspection period and you review this next phase. Now, could you do that by phone and say, hey, that document we went over, it's time to look at the step 2, because we're about to enter that phase. Now, step 2 is a lot easier, so it's easy just to do that with a quick phone call reminder. And then step 3 should be, you should talk to them about this when it's conditional loan approval has been received, because that's when things start to heat up again, right? So again, you can meet via Zoom or whatever. So I'm just gonna go over an overview with you and would love some help. Does somebody on the Zoom call want to help us read? Anybody?
I'll help.
Okay, give us the step 1 urgent reminders.
Wait, look, I'm just trying to find which document.
Okay, so we're in the 3-step buyer escrow process.
3-step, okay, I'm there.
All right, just read that at the beginning
Yes.
of the overview.
Yes. Okay, step 1, urgent reminders. Please do not post on social media about your transaction. You can post that you are buying a home and stay tuned, but no address and no details. Do not vent if you are frustrated with the seller or transactions. This has been known to get back to the seller and cause issues. Best to wait till you close. If you are getting a mortgage, do not buy anything on credit at this time. No major purchases on credit cards. Do not jeopardize your credit score.
Do you think that's valuable reminder to your clients right at this point, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Somebody else want to read sections A and B?
I'll take it.
Okay,
The first 2 or 3 weeks are the busiest, where you must, number 1, apply for a loan which you must initiate with your lender. 2, fully have the property inspected, which I arranged for you. 3, review documents relating to the property. At the end of the inspection period, you will be asked to sign your approval of the inspections and agree to proceed with the transaction. Ask for repairs to be done by the seller, and this takes a little time to negotiate. The seller has no obligations to do repairs, but many consider it. You will need to make a second deposit into escrow once you approve of the inspection or the repairs are agreed to.
okay. Again, kind of just a little guide, right? This is what you can expect to have happen. I'm just going to read step 2. Your lender may need more information from you, and it's very important you provide anything they request in a timely manner. Review documents. I'll recommend an attorney if applicable. This is a good time to have that conversation. Do you think you'll need an attorney to review your documents? There are several weeks where your lender and realtor are working, but quiet for you. It's a good time to prepare to move. And then step 3, near the end of the escrow period, it gets busy again. You receive a termite report. If it's a single family resident, you receive a survey and we'll go see the stakes. Your loan will be approved and you'll be asked to sign documents. You will have to deposit the balance of your down payment into escrow. You'll go on a final home inspection, which I will set up for you. You'll arrange to have utilities put in your name, and the property becomes yours on the day the sale records at the Bureau of Conveyances in Honolulu. Just kind of a quick overview of this is what's going to happen, right? So we're going to go into the other steps as we go along. All right. So communication, buyer and listing agents. Let's talk about who does what, right? Agents have this question: who opens escrow?
Aye.
The buyer's agent. Whoever said that. Thank you so much. Yes, the buyer's agent opens escrow, right? Because the buyer's agent usually has the money and needs the information really in a timely manner to transfer the money or bring the money, whatever that deadline is, right? It's a tight deadline. So the buyer's agent is interested in getting this done right away. And my suggestion is that you fill out the escrow instruction form that we require as a number 1. That is the most important document because it goes right to escrow, right? So get it to escrow. If you can't find your broker to sign it on time, send it off anyway and say, I'll get you my broker's signature this afternoon. It's about the client contact information that needs to go to escrow on time. Your commission is why the broker's signature is required, because we have your commission on there, right? And we say, yes, this is the commission we expect. That's why we need a broker's signature. That your commission isn't an issue until the end, so you can submit that later. Preparing a timeline, critical, right? Critical to prepare that timeline. And obviously, or many of us have a transaction coordinator do that for us. It is such a good exercise to do and help you become familiar with your transaction. We're going to do a little of that. Set up your file, right? What are you going to do? Oops, I forgot to bring a folder. I still use paper. I'm sorry, but paper works faster than this. I can't tell you how often I'm on the phone with an agent and ask a question and they go, oh, I don't have a contract in front of me. Well, can you get one? Well, let me see. And it's somewhere on their phone. It's somewhere on their computer. They need to find it. Really? Really? I make a file folder. I put the purchase contract in there. I probably put the seller's disclosure in there. And I put the timeline on the left side. And then I also print out an MLS sheet, right? An MLS summary page. Because you wouldn't believe how often you have to refer to the actual MLS listing while you're in escrow. So just have that available to yourself. It's so handy.
I learned that from you, and that was the best thing you taught me. And I carry those files around everywhere I go,
but you can instantly, you're instant. None of this not being prepared. How do you think your clients feel when you can't come up with the contract, right? And for listing agents, the same thing applies. Carry your listing or contract around and carry your MLS data input form and your seller's disclosure until you're going into escrow, and then you make an escrow file, right? But have those paper documents. It's just really, really faster than anything else. Thank you, Laura. So setting up a file, and then of course, what's required here, setting up your command file. And again, we often have TCs to help us with that. Setting up your email. I recommend you tag each email by the name of the transaction, 123 Main Street, and it becomes a tag. So I've got two categories in my email. One is listings and one is escrows. And when something actually goes into escrow, it continues on in escrow, right? In my escrow folder. So I can find all my correspondence there. When I have correspondence with people as they're looking, I have a category called new clients. And there it says Betty Buyer. And my Betty Buyer, file is huge because she's been looking for years. Anyway, so set up your folders in Gmail or whatever email program you use, as well as your paper file. Everybody knows we need to keep these documents, right? Just when you think you don't need them, something comes up and you need to be able to prove that you told your client, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Where is that proof? I texted it. Oh boy. Really? Your client is now totally upset about this and you texted it. I can't tell you often enough how clients aren't very satisfied with having been told something important in a text. It isn't the same as having a conversation and following the conversation up with, I just want to confirm we just had a nice conversation. Here's the 3 things we talked about and agreed to. Right? Be thorough in that way. All elements can turn sour. So best to have good correspondence about them. Tag it, yeah, make it easy to find. Sometimes, you have a conversation, an email conversation, and it's just called home inspection. And you forgot to name it by the address and all of that. And now you can't find this conversation because it's not It's not tagged into the folder. So I know Google has a great, search engine, but if we don't name it right, it's hard to find things. So beware of that. And finally, the law requires the brokerage to have access to your files. It's not me bitching at you that command hasn't been set up yet and your purchase contract isn't in command yet. It's the law. And the reason is that if your client calls me and has a complaint and I don't even have access to the file, they're going to go to the DCCA and file a RICO complaint and say, this brokerage doesn't even have my documentation. So we take this very seriously, and we want those command files set up within 48 hours of opening escrow, right? And that's part of what your transaction coordinator helps you do. If you don't know how to set up a command file or how to go in there, you need to go do that. You need to go learn how to do that, right? Everybody needs to know how to do this. Your transaction coordinator could be sick or whatever it is. So be aware of how to do your documents in command. All right, again, the purchase contract is our guide. The PC answers all of our questions. And when in doubt, check your purchase contract. Yep. So, timeline. A timeline is a really handy thing to learn how to do and to review. So we're going to spend just a few minutes doing a timeline. So all of you got a timeline exercise, right? Looks like this. And you also got a blank timeline to fill out, right? And you got a purchase contract in the email. So all of you can open that purchase contract on your computers and access it that way. So here's the instructions. You don't have to worry about filling anything on the top. This is your property and escrow information, right? You don't need to worry about filling all that in, but you must fill in the acceptance date. So we're going to use today's date as the acceptance date. Okay. Then your job is to go down the timeline, and in the yellow column, the column that's yellow, you're going to fill in by each contract paragraph the number from the contract. Now everybody's going to do this together. We're going to do this in little breakout sessions. So I'm going to stop the share here. And I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and you're all going to work this together. Is everybody clear on what you're doing? And you guys can turn around. Yoko, you can turn around and work together. Everybody clear? Fill out the timeline just with the numbers from the PUCAs in the contract. And the timeline is in the same order as the contract. So you just go from one page to the next. All right, here we go. You're going to go into breakout rooms. Please accept them. And I'm going to bring you back in 5 minutes. And we're going to fill this timeline out together. So you're not going to get done, but you'll get an idea and get started. All right. Here we go again.
Thank you. Oh, so that's right there?
Marion, I went into my breakout room, but I was the only one there.
Okay, so let me see what I can do about that. Go back in. I can't, I don't know. Yeah. Complicated. It is a zip form, so just a little bit.
Where you're gonna file, if you have an Escrow, file all of your documents.
All right, I don't know where to get back to my. Can you just do it by yourself for a while? I will do my best here to get you back into that room.
Yeah, no worries, no pressure. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see. Can you help me here? I need to get people into the breakout rooms that are not.
Are you still?
They're already in breakout rooms.
Hey, if I'm in a breakout room, guys, I'm in the middle of driving, so I'm doing all this on Zoom. So
Yeah.
if I'm supposed to be in one, I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. Don't worry about it. So
Okay.
I've already put them in breakout rooms, but these 3 people, I want to assign them, and I don't know where my breakout room indications are. Mission learning deposit. Like the next business day. So Jeannie, I just moved you to a new room if you want to accept that. Contract, like you need to. The next day, basically.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Marion, I got into that room. There was Elisa Velasquez, but her thing was muted. Anyway, there's a little hiccup there. So
Did I miss it?
Are you back?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get into a breakout room, Marion, but no problem.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Hi, Nancy, how you doing?
Good. I assume they're still in a breakout room because there's nobody talking, right?
You and I are.
I was gonna say that a lot of us got thrown out of our breakout rooms.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that?
I-
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
ended the breakout rooms and gave everybody a couple of minutes to go get a glass of water or go to the bathroom.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Everybody got kicked out.
okay.
And then we're going to finish the timeline together. So.
Oh.
Ally might know.
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you know how many agents we have?
For Maui,
Mm-hmm.
including the Big Island? Sure.
I don't know. You can go into MLS and ask. Yeah. All right. Calling everybody back. Nancy's there. See her.
Including the Big Island.
All right, everybody. I am sharing my screen to show you where to get our timeline. And I want to tell you that I think this timeline is awesome. And I encourage every transaction coordinator to consider using it. So I'm in my KW, right? Everybody knows how to get to your own my KW. And here we have the escrow timeline template folder right here in my KW under documents, right? Everybody know how to get there. And I'm going to open the escrow timeline, the KWRM timeline. And now there we go. So I need to stop my share. Where's my share? Stop share. And I need to share again. And we're going to share the timeline. There it is.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, all right. So we need to fill in, remember I mentioned you don't need to fill in all the top here. That's your client's data, stuff like that. But we want to start right here. And the first thing you want to notice is if there's a yellow bar up here, it says protected view. If you see a yellow bar in Excel, it means you're not going to be able to do anything. So you need to go enable editing. Now it doesn't do this on every computer, but it does it on many. It's over here. Can you? No. Okay, Ally, I need your help again. I need to bring this up there. Now let's do screen share again.
No, on for it. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, what are you trying to do? Yeah. The Zoom is over here.
Are we sharing our screen?
No, I stopped the screen share, so hit that first, I guess. There we go. Okay.
You want them up here?
Yeah. Up there. Cool, okay, here we go. There goes my neck. All right, so we agreed we need to fill in the acceptance date. We're gonna put in the acceptance date, and today is,
9/29.
thank you, 9/29. And when I do that, look what happens. All the dates are now 9/29. Yep, that's an indication that this sheet is gonna go along with you, right? So the first item we have to fill in here, as you can see, the first item is B1, our initial deposit. How many days does the buyer have to, and just shout it out, everybody participate, how many days? Three. Okay, look at that, it's due October 2nd. Okay, the additional deposit, when is that due? 2 days. Now watch what happens. Ooh, how did that happen? 2 days after J1, so it is somehow not calculating. We need to go to J1.
Oh, Marion, it doesn't calculate until the J1's filled out.
That's what I'm going to. So how many days for J1, everybody?
14.
14. Okay. So we put in the 14 and look what that does here. It now picks up that date from J1, right? And gives us October 15th as the due date for the second deposit. Isn't that cool? All right. So next is a reminder. Reminder, the balance of the down payment is due. When is the balance of the down payment? When do you think you want to tell your client to be ready to transfer the balance of the down payment? And this is prior to closing. How many days prior to closing do you think you want to warn your client?
5 to 3.
Wait a minute.
10.
I was gonna say 7, but I like 10, so we compromise, we go 8. How's that? 8. Will everybody agree with 8? Okay.
Yep.
Now, why does that fill in? Because we didn't fill in a closing date. So when is our closing date? 45 days. Go down here. Date is
In
closing.
F2.
45 days. So 45 is November 13th. See if
November
that-
14th. Make it a business day.
Yep.
November 11, what, 13?
Yes,
All right, so
but
now.
that's a Sunday.
That's a Sunday. So
So this says it's November 5th.
Okay.
the reminder.
Yes.
That's a reminder. That's just a reminder. So that's no problem, right? All right, so E3, is there a photovoltaic system or alarm system?
Yes.
There is. Look at the contract, please. What does the contract say? For E3, is there a photovoltaic system?
Yes.
There is. So what are the days? How many days After acceptance, must those documents be delivered?
7 days.
7 days, okay. And when PV system, when do they need to be approved by? How many days after? 10 days, okay. And then we've got E4, inclusion list to the buyer. When does that due? Not applicable? Thank you. And then we've got inclusion list reviewed, so that's also going to be not applicable. So then we have closing date extension. How many days in F?
10.
10.
10.
You. 10, and then we have an estimated preliminary title report due from escrow. So I kind of gauge this by when would I call escrow because I haven't gotten a title report yet. 7. You do 7. Okay, some people do 5. Yeah, you do 5. Me do 2. Me do 2. I speak English. I speak English well. Well, I get worried. I mean, they do it so fast these days. If it's not there in 5 days, it's like, what's up? Something up, you know, is it going to take a while or whatever? I want to know. All right. Prelim title report reviewed and approved. How many days? After receipt. This is G2B. 7. Yeah.
It says 30 days after acceptance.
What? G2B is 30?
7.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. And then, as needed, seller has how many days to cure defects? 10 days. Yeah, okay, 10 days. Right? And then tenancy information to escrow. 15 days. 15. And then H1A, no cash contingency. How many days for buyer to provide proof of cash funds? 3. Okay, now we got a color here. What does this color mean? So if we scroll over, oh my God, do I know how to scroll over here? I might not. Can somebody tell me on the sheet, what does it mean? Here, I can look here.
It's a weekend.
Its due date is a weekend? Wow. Okay, so right there, I need to make a note that that needs to be earlier, right? I can't do that on a weekend necessarily. I want to make sure if my buyer needs to get anything from their banker or from their accountant or whatever it is that we address that before the weekend. But that's what these color codes mean, is that it's either happening soon or it's on a weekend or whatever. Good one. All right. H2 is not applicable, right? And then we have H4A. When is the pre-qualification letter due from the buyer? H4A.
5 days.
5 days. And then H4B, when is conditional loan approval due?
30 days.
30 days.
3 days.
Whoops, what did I just do there?
1900.
Yeah, right. It does that. Why is it doing that?
Oh, wow.
Days prior to closing, not days when it's.
Oh, prior to closing, 15. It's a 45-day closing, right? It's still giving me January 15th.
Yeah.
All right, we gotta fix that.
I don't know.
Don't know. Well, it's okay. We'll figure it out.
It's working in my Google Sheets version. I'll
Okay,
check it though. H4B.
I'm on Excel here at the office, so anyway. Next is H4B, satisfaction of lender's conditions. Prior to closing, how many days? 8? Somebody say. 8. Thank you. All right. And we've got seller's disclosure due. When does that due? 7 after acceptance. And seller's disclosure receipt from the buyer. How many days later should the receipt be sent? 3 days. Let me explain to you, that's a really important item, right? Your seller's disclosure receipt is the most important document that the listing agent needs to have, not the seller's disclosure itself. You need to show proof that you provided that document on time. So it's a really, literally the law writes all about this receipt. So just be aware of that. That is an important document. I3B is seller's disclosure approved by buyer. How many days? 7, right? So this is so great because this sheet that calculates all these for you, right? It just figured this out. Yeah. So buyer to complete final walkthrough. How many days? You got to look at your contract. Final walkthrough. 5 days. All right, and final repairs, release funds for repairs. Probably 0.
Probably 0.
Probably 0. That's J4. Yeah, and then we go to J8, removal of items to be completed. How many days before closing? 6. And cleaning to be completed. 6. And notice here, you've got this opportunity right on your timeline to note whether it's done to be done by a professional or not. So you click on this line.
You did.
Comes up here, and you can right up here in the line in Excel, it appears up at the top, and you can go there and you can put an X next to the puka that says whatever it is. So now you've got it right on your timeline, whether this is a professional cleaning requirement or not. Okay, release of funds for pet treatment.
Oh, error in the, it's applicable, but it has nothing in it.
All right, it should have a 0 in it or an O. The puka doesn't take an NA and it doesn't take a 0, so we had to fudge it with a capital O.
Oh, right.
And the reason is that we don't want this happening after closing. So we put in pet treatment, it's got to be completed by closing. Like, do your buyers really want a flea treatment after closing? Right? I don't even understand why the contract is written that way, but it is. So we suggest to you to put 0 there so that it happens before, right? It could happen right after the closing in those 3 days when recordation is happening. That's when this can happen. All right. And then we've got staking and survey. Is there staking here? We are on paragraph K1 or K2.
Survey 20 days after.
20. Okay. And then we have K3, buyer to instruct seller of defects is not applicable really. And then we've got L2, termite inspector selected by buyer or seller. How many days? 7. And again, we can go here and say, who's selecting this person? Buyer or seller? Buyer. Buyer. Okay, so we can put the X there and that's easy. And now we got that. And termite, the report to be delivered when?
14 days before.
14. Okay. And L2 as needed tenting schedule. So not applicable, right? Not applicable because it's only applicable if it's needed to be done. And then you can go in here and put in some dates. All right, that takes us to M1 documents. When are they to be delivered? M1D?
10 days.
10. Okay. And then the receipt, probably 3 days later.
Correct.
And then how many days does the buyer have to approve?
10.
10 days. And notice here we've got leasehold documents. There's no leasehold documents section in the contract, though they would be required as part of M1 if it were a leasehold property. So we build this in here because many of you sell leasehold, and it's a reminder to make sure you get those leasehold documents as well, right? So you would want to put the same, I've lost my mouse, there it is. You'd want to put the same dates if this were leasehold 10 and approval of 10, right? So because it's the same thing, so I'm just gonna pretend it is. All right. N2, rental documents delivered to buyer. Is there any rental docs? No, no rental docs, not applicable. And no approval of rental documents. Okay. So then we should complete our co-op or DA and get everything signed. And we probably want to do that. Co-op and the DA should be done, what is it, 15 days before?
Yes.
Or after acceptance, so it's
At least.
30 days after acceptance, right? 30 days in this puka, and then complete your commission input in command. When should you do your commission and submit it in command so that a DA gets generated and the company knows you've got an escrow? When do you think you should do that?
Like 2 days after.
Yeah, 10 days is fine. Like if anybody's gotten an email from Christie's email, I believe asks for it in 2 weeks as a minimum, right? So we like to do it early because it's like, get it out there, let the company know you've got some money coming in and get ready for you, right? It's really helpful. So, whoops. So this one, I might put 15 days after acceptance. All right, so this is very cool. So now I'm going to go back to the top and look what I get to do. I get to click on this little due date here and put them all into order. Oh my God, I can't see. Sort, what did it say? Checklist, oldest to newest. I think that's what I want, right? From the oldest, where my oldest to newest. Look at that. I now have a chronological timeline. I can't tell you how often I've seen timelines that aren't put into chronological order. And I kind of scratch my head and go, what? How does this even help you? Like, right? If you don't put it in chronological order, what's the point? So everybody, please learn how to put it into chronological order. Now I'm going to show you a couple more things because I think Nancy brought up that we've got some red indications here, right? And on the side of our spreadsheet, I don't know if I can move it. On the side of the spreadsheet, it gives us a legend. I have to open it further. A legend about what this means, right? So I want to check all those dates, see what the legend says. What does that coloring mean? Is the weekend? Do I have to move anything? Closing date shouldn't happen on a weekend, you know? So, and right here, it's telling me the closing date is on a weekend. Well, that's not going to work. So I might as well talk to my buyer about it right away. Well, it's a Saturday. Would you like to try to move it to the Friday before? Or otherwise it will automatically move to Monday, right? What do we do to move it to Friday? What do we have to do?
Get all parties to agree.
How?
Ask them first, and then if everybody agrees to an amendment.
It's an amendment. That's right. Ask them first, she says. Right? Have a conversation. Everybody agreed. And if it's not in writing, it's not legitimate. We literally had escrow change a closing date based on conversations and emails. And suddenly the seller did not want to close on that verbally agreed to closing date. And we asked for escrow to move their documents, change everything back to the original closing date, and had to call escrow and say, do you have an amendment to change this closing date? No, we do not. Then what made you change it? Well, the lender called us and told us that they wanted to close early. I said, I'm sorry, the lender is not a party to this contract. So does shit happen? Yeah, I was like appalled. Like, what do you mean you've changed the closing date and you don't have an amendment? And sure enough, the escrow officer who was on vacation calls me and says, we're so sorry. You're absolutely right. You need an amendment. We will put all documents back to the original closing date. So just be aware of that. So then here's the other cool thing about this timeline is this timeline. Where am I? Here I am. This timeline lets you say, for instance, okay, the seller's disclosure statement is due to the buyer. And we said 7 days, but it actually got done. Nope. It's the
So
next.
Yeah, just put in your due date.
What? Don't I put it right here?
Yep.
So if I put it in there and put the date and that say, I actually got it on 10/4/2022, right? So it's completed, and now my due date changes for when I have to go down and file on 3, right? Seller's disclosure is now due the right amount, the right date based on when we actually got it. This is so cool. Otherwise, you have to do it in handwriting, right? You got to remember, oh, we got the seller's disclosure early, so it's actually due earlier, and my receipt is due earlier, and you have to change all those things. If you go in and use this system, it actually does it for you. Kathy Becklin designed this spreadsheet, and I love it because it is so precise and it lets you really manage your transaction well. So I keep mine on my desktop and go in there and say what I've gotten, and I don't even need my TC to send me a new timeline because I would just prefer to have it. So that's
So
there's a way. Yes.
yeah, hi, this is Kathy. I did have an error that was found in it recently. So just this morning, I put up a new version. I also suggest I have in the information, there's a link to a Google spreadsheet. So if you like using Google spreadsheets, you can use that. But a clause to those, even as I'm watching Marion use this, I no longer have a PC. So if you have PC issues, please bring them up to me, but I may have to get on with you to understand what's exactly happening there.
Okay. Can you see? I need to get out of here. And I can't see. Where's the X?
And a warning that many of the escrow timelines that they have provided to us over times, they do not do they'll set the dates based on what you put in, but if somebody just sends the seller's disclosure early, they do not always update those. So be aware of that.
All right. Live and learn. Okay, here we are again. So Allie, I need your help again because my slides are all over the lot. See? All right. Just minimize it. Well, no, sorry. Need to not have it be going over 2 screens. So I think you need to drag the bottom up, right? There you go. How do you do that so fast? Okay, fantastic. I'm not going to share screen. All right. Okay, where's my share screen? Okay. Back to our presentation. All right, so we just did a timeline. Congratulations. I want you to notice how tedious it is, right? It's detailed. It can be confusing. It's a great thing to know what your TC does for you. And it also helps to always audit it, right? Go through your timeline, read it and go, really? This is due on such and such a day? You read your contract and make sure you feel comfortable. It's a great way to get familiar. All right. Seller's disclosure, mandatory, right? It's a law written for the buyer, for the seller. So seller is obligated to disclose. It's usually the first item due from the listing agent. So if you haven't asked your sellers to fill one out yet, you need to do so right away. My rule to myself is I want it done before we go live. Right? We've all kind of learned to do that in the last few years as things have sold so quickly. We might as well be ready. Do it right away. Like Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're going to do, here's the 3 things we're going to do. We're going to sign our contract, then we're going to get together and I'm going to come in for photography. And then we're going to get together and I'm going to take you through the seller's disclosure. Oh, you don't need to do that. Just give it to us. We filled one out before. Great, fine. Let me send it to you. And but get that done in advance, right? Yeah. All right, anticipating items in your seller's disclosure and in the process. If there's a PV system, is it owned or is it leased? You wouldn't believe the number of people who paid off their lease and thought, oh, I now own it. No, they simply paid down their lease, right? So they get it's cheaper when they do that. So that's why people have done that. So we want to be sure about that. So getting those documents, whether it's owned or leased, as a listing agent, you want to get those documents right up front so that you know the answers to this and can provide the documents easily. If it's owned, the the buyer agrees on the contract that 3 days after they approve all these documents, they will apply to whatever to make the changes, right? Because now it's got to change over. The MECO agreement has to be changed. If it's leased, they agree, the buyer agrees 3 days after approving the PV system, they agree to apply to the PV company to take over the lease. Because guess what? They have to be approved for that. We recently had a transaction where the buyer was buying something and it took them up to here in terms of what they could qualify for. And the PV company said no. Yeah, that was an interesting little kerfuffle. Yeah, but these things happen, right? So you want to make sure you're aware that our job is to make sure the buyer is aware of that and does that. Alarm systems, these are mostly for big end houses, right? 7 million, 10 million, $15 million homes are going to have alarm systems, and they're going to have contracts where those alarm systems are connected to a service, right? And somebody comes, notifies the police to come, right? So how do those transfer? How does all that work? Inclusions. Furniture must be identified before you list on the MLS. Please, please, please. I have seen numerous deals where a seller was not ready to provide an inclusion list within 7 days. And even though, you know, it's an 03 termination provision, meaning there's some extra days, the buyer after a couple of days says, I don't want to deal with somebody who can't honor the first item in the contract. What is with that? Once you're in contract, your clients are under stress. The more you can get done before you are under stress with them, or they are, you know, all anxious about what's happening, the better off for them. So get these things done before you even list the property. Vacation rental. Yuck. I do not sell vacation rentals. I'm a disservice to anybody when it comes to that, because I don't know what VRBO and Airbnb are requiring these days. So I would build into a contract that says buyer and seller to agree to transfer of all bookings and revenues to take place after closing within 10 days of acceptance, right? How is this going to be done? Let's make sure my buyer understands how they're going to get this money and for these bookings that are going to take place after closing. So we want to talk about that. There are some people on here who will do a lot of vacation rental sales. Can you share with us anything you do to deal with VRBO and Airbnb? Is what I said reasonable? Just a clause that says buyer and seller will agree how to transfer these funds.
So based on what I've seen, VRBO and Airbnb are not transferring anything. So the transfer has to happen at close if it's the owner that runs it. Usually the VRBO and Airbnb are run by the property management company. So depending on whether the owners sticking with the same property management company or going to a different one, you have to negotiate between them and do that in advance of close.
You need to address it, right? Yeah, you need to address it. So keep that in mind, put it in your contracts that the parties will agree and address this. Long-term rentals, security deposits. No, no include in escrow. No. So what happens is your buyer takes over a tenant in the Ohana, and 3 months after closing, the tenant gives notice and wants their deposit back 45 days or 30 days later. And the buyer calls you up and says, "Oh, we don't have a security deposit." And you go, "Oh yeah, you do. It was credited to you in closing." Yeah, but now we don't have it. Now we don't have it. You don't want to do that. Number two, commingling money applies to your clients who are now a landlord. They are not supposed to commingle money and put their tenant's security deposit into their checking account and use it. That's called commingling, right? We know about commingling. Well, it applies to our clients who've taken on tenants. So getting that security deposit as a separate check from the seller to the buyer to be handed over on the day of recordation, take it to the bank and tell your client to open a little bank account to hold the security deposit and keep it away from your checking account. You want to have it available to you, right? So that's always good advice to a client. Estoppel certificates. Does anybody remember what an estoppel certificate is?
Heard that word since class.
Do we know what it means? Nobody's volunteering. Yeah, an estoppel certificate, and I've just written one up. It's real simple form. I put it in the share drive for everybody in the PC program. It's a real simple form and it's wonderful. You go to the tenants, you know, when you have to deal with tenants and you got to make them feel secure that you're going to work with them and help them and whatever else. So you say, I have this estoppel certificate. I just want you to certify what you're paying in rent and how much security deposit you believe the landlord is holding. And then I want you to tell me whether you have a lease or not, and I want you to sign this piece of paper. We just want to be totally above board and make sure you confirm that. That's what that is.
As the buyer's agent, you're doing that?
As the listing agent, I'm doing that.
Okay.
Now, a buyer might request estoppel certificates. I just get them done up front because it's a really good practice. People tend to be pretty sloppy about their leases, or a lease is 5 years old, still valid because it's on month to month, but who knows what they're paying at this point, right? And how much security deposit? Let's get that confirmed. So they are a great way to talk to tenants and help tenants feel more secure about, okay, she's taking care of me, you know, like she's got my best interest at heart here. So it's a good little tool. Keep it in mind. And you can just make it up. It's really easy. I, Betty Buyer, pay $1,500 in rent. My security deposit is I've lived here since, and that's it. Signed, Betty Buyer. That's it. Okay, what's next? So now we're in week 1 of escrow, and the first thing we're going to do by actually opening escrow is we're going to review with the seller the 3-step communication plan and talk to the seller about what is right, because we did the buyer on the overview. Let's do the seller on step 1 of the communication plan. Anybody want to read to us the first half of the page?
Sure. Overview. Excuse me. It is strongly suggested that you not post on social media.
No, sorry, Jeannie, you're in the wrong form. We're talking about the seller communication plan.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
And we're talking about step 1, not the overview.
Okay, I had the page backwards.
No problem.
Oh, no, wait. Okay, step 1.
It's the seller escrow process. Somebody else have it handy? Have it up?
For escrow.
I'll read. I'm gonna read until you find your place, Jeannie.
Yeah, no, I'm looking, step 3, step seller escrow process.
Yeah, and you're in step 1.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. I was reading the overview on top of that.
Right.
I apologize. Okay. Step 1, this time is rather busy. You are now in contract and we have X amount of days to complete this sale.
Do you not have a big black, big bold thing in front? Okay, so I'm gonna interrupt because mine has a big bold statement before it that says, do not make any changes, alterations, or repairs to the property
I don't
during
have,
the entire escrow process until agreed to in the purchase contract. You must maintain the property as it is. Does everybody have that on step 1 of the seller's process? Not the overview. We are in step 1, page 2.
Nope,
That's not what was sent out.
that's not what we have.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's step 1 on the overview. That's the overview. Go to the next page. That's actually step 1. All right. You must advise me if anything leaks, breaks, or goes into disrepair at any time during the escrow process. Do you think that's a valuable thing to remind your client to do if you're the listing agent, right? Before you know it, they call you up one day and they say, oh yeah, I had a big leak in the bathroom. I fixed it. You did what? Excuse me? Hello? Now I've got to disclose it and it happened a week ago? No way, right? So yes, this is a very valuable item. All right, did you find it, Jeannie?
yeah.
You go from number 1.
Okay, you're now in contract and we have X amount of days to complete this sale. 2, escrow will be opened with the initial earnest money deposit and the contract. 3, a transaction timeline will be agreed upon by the agents and I will review that with you.
I might even have that with me as I go through this, right? I might even bring the timeline now as we're going through this item. Go ahead.
4, in these first 2 weeks, you will have to be available to A, provide the seller's disclosure, answer questions and provide clarification. If we have not already completed it, we must do that immediately. The buyer may have questions and there can be a back and forth for clarification of the disclosure.
All
B,
right, hold on. Let's see if somebody else wants to read the next section, B. Anybody want to read B? Don't all speak at once or I'm going to pick somebody.
I will.
All right, thank you.
Okay. B, the buyer will have the property fully inspected, which may mean more than one inspection. Prepare the home for inspection and leave the property during that time. At the end of the inspection period, the buyer may ask you to make repairs or for a credit to cover the cost of repairs. It's best to anticipate this and decide at the time how to respond. No need to worry about it. You have no obligation to make repairs, but sellers often do.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you here for a second. How many people have had sellers say, I'm not making any repairs. This is an as is. I'm not making any repairs, right? And they get all huffy when you are suggesting that repairs might come. Do you think it's valuable to let them know in advance that this might happen in a couple of weeks, as opposed to just bringing them a request for repairs towards the end of the J1? Do you see the
Yes.
difference, right? The difference is you let the client get upset now. I'm not making any repairs. Okay, we don't need to decide now. You don't need to make repairs. You're not obligated to, but many sellers do consider it if they're reasonable. So let's just see what happens. I'm just letting you know it could happen. Again, it's client management, right? Letting them know. Yeah, go on.
Okay. Make the property available for any other inspections done within this time period, all at the buyer's cost and discretion. If the buyer asks for repairs, determine if you're willing to make those repairs, or offer credit at closing. The seller is not obligated to do repairs, but many sellers will consider the request and do some.
I've kind of repeated myself here, right? So you get this as a Word document. You can edit it, you can modify it, you can take that out if you think it's too repetitive, for sure. Thank you, Sunny. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you.
All right, I'm gonna finish up. If condominium AOAO or homeowner HOA association docs are applicable, we must order those. It's an upfront cost to you. At this point, we do bring them into escrow, right? For a while there, they had to be paid up front, so whatever applies. And provide those to the buyer within the first 7 to 10 days. I'll do that for you. If a survey is called for, I will arrange that for you. And if a termite inspection is required, I will arrange that for you to be done at about 15 days before closing. So here you go. This is the detail of what you, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, can expect for these next 2 weeks, right? So you can't tell people often enough. You can, yeah, how many times have you all had the experience of somebody saying, I told you that 2 weeks ago? And you're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to remember all that, right? Just because I'm telling you something in a class, right? How many times do I have to tell you this? And you go, multiple times. We are human beings and we learn through repetition. So helping our clients understand what's going on is really, really helpful. Okay, so what happens in the first week here? If you're the buyer's agent, you're going to make sure that deposit is in. You're going to make sure to schedule that home inspection as early and quickly as possible and coordinate with your buyer's travel schedule or arrival time. Termite company, if you're selecting the termite company, just give, if it says 7 days to give the termite company, I give it on day 1. If I'm the listing agent, it says I have 7 days to provide a seller's disclosure, I give it on day 1. If I have to set up survey and termite company, because I'm the listing agent, I do it within the first 3 days. I just want to get this done. I don't wait because the contract says I have 7 days to submit it. I have 7 full days. I can do that on day 1 or day 2, right? Yeah. All right. Other inspections. Does your buyer want other inspections? I'm going to remind you of a document we have in our forms folder that's called the buyer's disclosure. The buyer's disclosure is not an amendment to the purchase contract. It is a document for conversation with your buyer. And it asks questions like, do you think you might want a mold inspection? Do you think you want a roof inspection? Do you think you have any other need? Should we inspect the cesspool or the septic system? What other inspections might you want? There's additional information in there about condominiumized property. There's information about if you're going to take on a tenant that is not in the purchase contract. So consider taking a look at that buyer's disclosure. It is a useful form. Clients must apply for their loan, arrange for an attorney's document review if that is, if an attorney is to review the documents. So if any of you have sold property in Kailani has CC&Rs that are this thick. They are so huge and so onerous. And we've had difficulty because buyers don't read them, sellers don't read them or haven't read them, and nobody knows what's going on. And then the buyer goes and does something at the property and the Kailani police, yes, the Kailani police comes along and says, that is not in our guidelines. You can't do what you just did there. And the buyer comes back and says, seller didn't tell us that. Now it was in the documents and they're supposed to read those documents. But this is what happens. It wasn't disclosed that they weren't allowed to do something or whatever the case may be. So having somebody review those documents for us is very valuable. And finally, estimated loan disclosures. Keep in mind, you're looking for those. Your buyer is going to get them as soon as they've applied for the loan, right? They're going to get that estimated loan disclosure. Some lenders aren't giving them to us. I ran into that the other day, but for the most part, lenders are now sharing those with us or get them from your client and help your client understand what does all this mean, right? We're seeing huge numbers for points, right? It's huge. So it's pretty startling when somebody applies for a loan and says, okay, I'll do 2 points. And okay, this is, I'm going to get the 6% rate here for 2 points. And then they see the estimated disclosure and there's a $14,000 item in there for points, right? Yeah. So we want to be aware of that. The first week for the listing agent is meet with your client, obviously, and go over this, the step 2, right, of the beginning of the escrow process with them that we just read. You want to make sure that deposit is received. And I make a point of reminding everybody about this because, yeah, there are escrow companies that kind of let it happen a day late.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so I hate, I don't know, I'm not naming names, I'm just saying it's our job to watch that. It's our job to make our seller aware that the 3 days have expired and there's no deposit. What would they like to do? Oh, well, let's give them another day. Okay, right, but then the seller loses the right to cancel. So let's hope they make the deposit. They don't lose the right to cancel. They lose the right to cancel per O2. They still have a right per H5 to cancel per termination provision O3, which gives them some extra time, right? All right. What else do we do? So the SRPDS has to get to the buyer. Again, do it as soon as possible. Set up the termite inspection. Get the survey quotes, right? Surveyors are going to quote to you. And so if you get a couple of quotes, you'll see they're quite different. The charges are. So find that out, get survey bids, request documents within whatever time frame is comfortable, and then ask escrow for an estimated seller's closing statement. These do not get generated normally unless we ask for them. And would your seller like to know, okay, I'm in escrow now, what exactly does this mean for me, right? When we close. So getting an estimated closing statement from escrow for your seller is a really nice thing to do. Okay. All right, second week, if you're the buyer, review the seller's disclosure, get questions answered, and document those. So this is a process that is okay. It is okay for the buyer to have questions about the seller's disclosure and go, you had a leak in the living room. Could you tell us a little more about that? How did it get fixed? When did it happen? How serious was it? Did anything get damaged? Whatever it might be. The buyer might have questions about things, and that is just fine. And doing it back and forth to answer those questions. As a buyer's agent and the listing agent, you want to file those answers, the questions and answers in Command. You can put it in a separate folder or just upload it all as part of the seller's disclosure, because those questions and answers are part of the seller's disclosure. Now, could they happen after the buyer signs the seller's disclosure? Yes. If somebody 14 days in or 3 weeks into the transaction says, we went over the seller's disclosure again, could we have a little more information about this? It's not about reopening anything or making something, I want to cancel because of this. No, it's just information. So we want to cooperate if somebody, has questions. So helping people understand that that process is normal and to be expected is really helpful. The buyer's loan application has to be submitted. All the documents need to be provided to the lender. Just checking in with your buyer, make sure that that's happening. Review the preliminary title report, right? Read it and understand. You go, Marion, there are 38 paragraphs on this title report. Yeah, I know. So here's what I do when I see 38 paragraphs on the title report. I realize that, of course, the subdivision documents are on this property. I'm now seeing that title more and more is adding subdivision documents to every property in a subdivision, right? So you might get these easily, very likely you will get 27, 38 paragraphs. So you'll open them up and you'll see, oh, this is about the subdivision in 1992 or the subdivision in 2007, right? Whatever, and that's what they're all about. Well, the subdivision exists and whatnot, so I don't worry so much about that. I go down and find the more recent documents because all the CC&Rs should be there, easements should be there, any kind of special agreements. So I want to make sure that I'm pretty clear on what is in each of those paragraphs. You open them up, take a look at it, and if you don't have a clue what's going on, who do you call?
Ghostbusters.
Escrow. Who do you call? Ghostbusters. Yeah, escrow busters. Call escrow. This is your escrow officer who can help you most easily understand, right? You can call your broker or your coach, but I will probably turn around and go, I haven't got a clue. Let's go call escrow. So might as well start there, right? For those of you that are in the PC program, when you first start, please send your seller's disclosure and your title report to your broker and ask for help with those, right? No need for you to take this on all by yourself on your first transaction. Home inspection, you want to review the report and decide the next steps. In other words, we don't just have our home inspection and approve the inspection period. No, right? It's, remember our 5 and 2. So we hopefully have our inspection done 5 days before the inspection period expires. And now I always, even if my clients attend the inspection, I make sure they get the report first, and let's read the report and then decide. Something about sleeping on it all and, you know, digesting it in writing that's really helpful to buyers to go like, oh yeah, okay, fine. And helping them be reasonable about what to ask for, right? So some of the information that you might find out will lead to other inspections. Suddenly you noticed, or the inspector noticed, there's some black discoloring under the kitchen sink, and now you might want to do a mold test, and you might want to just, you know, or start bringing somebody in who can tell you more about that. So all of that is valid. And then asking for repairs. How do we do that, right? So what does it say? Approval of J1 by due date, right? It's back to somehow the slide is going weird on us. But so that's obviously important, our 5 days, right? So we're going to track those 5 days really careful. And our goal is 2 days before the end of the J1 period to have everything clarified, or we're going to ask for an extension. So negotiating repairs. Buyers often request repairs. Sellers are not obligated to make repairs, but they often do. What if there's an as-is addendum? What's that? You can still ask, exactly. So here's my suggestion and rule on this is an as-is addendum is intended to say to the buyer from the seller, please do not nickel and dime me about petty stuff. That's really what this is about, right? So you are going to get a list of 14 items or 44 items that could be wrong with this property. Please don't ask me to fix 44 items. So one of the ways around that is in your as-is addendum, you could qualify it by saying in the special terms, buyer shall pay for any repairs under $2,000 or up to $2,000. And now you've taken care of all that petty stuff that is in there. However, if the hot water heater is broken or needs repair, or there's a leak, or there's a septic system that isn't functioning, or you know, some big repair, you can now definitely go back. So talking to your buyers about the meaning of an as-is is important. It needs to mean something, right? And then being reasonable and keeping the other party happy, it's an important part of a transaction. It's important, right? When people get wigged out and pissed, boy, that your transaction can go south. So we want to avoid that. Yeah. All right, the second week for the listing agent, attend the home inspection. Clarify the seller's disclosure questions, review requests for repairs, respond and negotiate, review preliminary title report, right? Seller should also review that. Seller's agent should review that title report if you haven't gotten it in advance. And then get the documents for M1. No doubt they are now due in this second week. So what if escrow is canceled? How do you cancel? Notification to cancel must be signed by buyers and submitted to the seller prior to the expiration of J1. Prior to the expiration of I3, that's seller's disclosure. I4 is later discovered information. Or I5, I don't know. We have a contract. Somebody tell me what I5 is. I got my paragraph numbers wrong. I think this is
Yeah.
an old, I think I need to fix this slide. I think we used to have an I5, but it's all gotten scrunched. So I don't think that applies anymore, right? Okay, but there's no due date in there. No, right. So I'll have to be, it's just it's I3 and 4 that apply here, right? Yeah.
And it's I2 too.
I2 also, great. So
amended.
I need to fix this slide. I have noticed that I somehow pulled an old slide deck anyway. And M1, right? M1 is the other reason why people can cancel. Is there any other reason to cancel? Who else can cancel? When can we cancel?
If it's contingent on financing and they don't get the loan,
Yeah. Who can cancel?
the buyer,
The buyer can cancel. Can the seller cancel?
yes.
Yeah. If anything, that's the beauty of H5. H5 says, if the buyer doesn't meet any one of the dates in H1, 2, 3, or 4, the buyer has right to cancel as per 03. Termination provision 03 allows for extra days, right? We write it as 5 days. So the seller could think about it and go, well, this conditional loan approval isn't coming. They're not asking for an extension. I've had it. Let's cancel. If, let's say he waited 3 days, she waited a few days, and suddenly a conditional loan approval arrives a few days late, can the seller still cancel per H5 because it was late?
Yes.
No. That's a good one. I love that. No, not. The moment it is delivered, if they have not delivered their cancellation first,
Oh.
the moment the contingency is in fact delivered, they can no longer cancel per H5
Okay.
or per 03. Yeah, that's a good one, Nancy, right? Interesting little distinction. Yeah. Yeah. Another one that I love is this whole thing about the inclusions in E, what is it, E3 or something, E4?
Yes.
All the inclusions, right? If the seller doesn't provide those inclusions within 5 or 7 days, whatever it says, the buyer can say, I don't want to deal with somebody who doesn't give me the inclusions on time. Let's cancel. So there's all these little opportunities, and that cancellation is per 03. So the buyer has 5 extra days. They can say, oh, let's give them a couple of days. No inclusion list. Let's give them another day. No inclusion list. What do you want to do, Mr. Buyer? I want to cancel. I don't like this. If it's day 6 and you didn't realize that this was an 03 termination provision and you didn't give your buyer the information that they have this right to cancel, can they cancel after 6 days? That's correct. No, that is gone. And for those of us who don't understand termination provision 03, this is a big deal because clients come to us and say, my agent didn't tell me I could have canceled at that point. So what I want to point out to you is that every paragraph in the contract has its own termination provision. It names, every paragraph names the termination provision that applies to that paragraph. So let's all look at the delivery of furnishings, right? Which is E4. Inclusion of furnishings. It says, inventory of furnishings is to be provided to buyer by blank date. If seller does not provide the inventory list to the buyer within the specified time period, then buyer may elect to terminate this purchase contract pursuant to paragraph 03. If buyer is not satisfied with the inventory list, buyer may elect to, within 7 days after receipt of the inventory list, to terminate this purchase contract pursuant to 02. What does 02 mean? Does everybody know termination provision 02 means if you cancel within the contingency time period, you get your money back. Right? That's all right, because here you've given this right to cancel. So termination provision 02 is you get 7 days. That's it. The seller, however, is given 03, given some extra days, because we know sometimes it takes sellers a few days to provide that list. And so there's a little extra time built in. So I point this out because you will be surprised if you start taking a look at the purchase contract in paragraphs where you might be having an issue. It says which termination provision applies. So knowing where 03 is applicable is really important because of those 5 extra days, or another contract might say 7 days or 3 days, right? That's a puka that each company fills in differently. So each transaction you run could have a different 03 termination number of days. So it's important to be aware of that so that your client knows what their rights are.
It's 5 the amount of days that's in our template.
Our template says 5. Yes, that is correct. Yeah. So that right is given to either party, right? Because 03 could apply to the buyer and it could apply to the seller. So, so when you don't have conditional loan approval coming, you want to read H3, which is all about what are the rights if things don't happen on time and who's got those rights, right? That's our financing contingency. And you'll see it says here that the buyer may elect to terminate this purchase contract per 02, or let's see, what else does it say? If buyer has met all the conditions of the loan commitment letter, but the lender fails to fund prior to closing, then the buyer may elect to terminate this purchase contract per 03. And they're given some extra time to think about it. So the paragraphs tell you what your client's rights are. And it's really important to become aware of those. All right. Contingency waiver form, again, just want to point out that on the J1, there is always an option regardless of what your form looks like. This one is on the bottom here. If you check it, the buyer does not accept the findings of J1 and hereby elects to cancel the above referenced purchase contract, right? Just cancel. And the beauty of canceling, yeah? Question? No. The beauty of that is, remember that we do not need to justify our cancellations, right? We don't need to say whatever. You can just say, it just turns out it's not the right property for my clients. You don't need to be insulting. You don't need to be whatever. Sometimes it helps a listing agent to know, could you tell me if your client was concerned about anything about the property? No, they love the property. It's just their circumstance just isn't making it possible right now. I don't even want to go into, you know, they couldn't qualify or whatever else. If there's a letter from the lender that says there's, you know, the loan can't be issued, then there's a document that I can refer to. But I don't need to explain. If somebody wants to cancel because of J1, during J1, because there's a lot of roosters suddenly, and they didn't realize that, I don't need to explain that. Wonderful. All right, third week of the communication process. So we go to our buyers escrow process, and on page 3, step 2 says, you've completed your inspections and decided to proceed with the purchase. Most important at this time is for you to work with your lender and ensure that all documents and information that they need have been provided. If you're purchasing a condo or a home with a homeowners association, complete the review of the documents. Please review the documents yourself as thoroughly as possible. Right? It's like, we need to tell them this. This is important what's in here, especially the house rules. Right? Especially those house rules, but also the bylaws. Understand how many votes it takes to take a board member off of the board, or understanding those things becomes important. The next phase of the transaction is very quiet. During this time, the following will happen. An appraiser is going to appraise the property, and I'll notify you when that happens. Your lender will let you know how the appraisal comes out. If purchasing a home, a surveyor is going to survey the property, and your lender will be completing the loan package and submitting it to underwriting during this time. You should be prepared to have the balance of your down payment available and transferred to escrow about a week prior to closing. Your lender will be speaking to you about insurance. If you wish my assistance in regard to your homeowner's insurance, I'm happy to help. Do you wish to have a home warranty? Right? If you want to bring that up, talk about a home warranty. Explain to people what a home warranty is. Will you have a renter? This is a good time to prepare to move or research and pick a management company. Review the landlord tenant code or set up a savings account to hold a security deposit if you are self-managing. And at the end of this phase, you can anticipate receiving conditional loan approval, and you may be asked for additional information or documentation by the lender. So again, just like, okay, this is where we're at now. This is where we're at. Are you okay? Any questions, right? It's just a good relations, right? To connect with your client and say, okay, time to read page 3 of this document. And I just want to go over that to you. It's a really quiet time and good time for you to move, get ready to move and all those things. And then it's going to get busy again towards the end. So.
Marion?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the insurance, if it's vacant land, what type of insurance would you recommend?
Liability.
Just liability?
Liability. Yeah. If you've got vacant land and somebody walks on your land and breaks their leg, yeah, you're liable. So liability insurance. It's really cheap, guys. Liability insurance is really cheap. So, people who are asked to carry liability insurance, is not a big deal. So, yeah. All right. Third week, what happens? The buyer's agent, we're going to submit documents to the client and the attorney. Review the house rules and minutes yourself, right? We should read those items, house rules and minutes, so that you can pick up on what's going on. What is the board talking about? What are the issues they're addressing, right? And what are the house rules? When I first got into real estate here and I read my first house rules for a vacation rental condo, and it says, no hanging of towels on the banister, right? In the middle of the night. And I go, what? Doesn't everybody hang their towels on the banister? That's outrageous. And then I went like, oh God, the place would look really awful if everybody did that. I get it, right? But you have to read these things and make people aware that that's what it says, right? Yeah. Follow up with the lender to ensure that all docs are submitted, and make sure the appraiser is scheduled and consider attending. Actually, there should have been an appraisal reminder in our timeline. I like to know 7 days in, have you ordered that appraisal yet? I can't believe how many lenders aren't ordering appraisals right away. It's like, what? So I now follow up with lenders. Have you ordered an appraiser, right? It's just like, I want this thing moving along. All right, on the listing agent side, you want to make sure you've scheduled the survey and the TIR, anticipate the appraiser. I would suggest you be present, provide reasonable comps. Appraisers like reasonable comps, they do. And then point out new or improved elements. Is there PV on the house? Is there new air conditioning? Is there anything new that's not readily visible? This happened to me not long ago in a house I was selling. They had just converted cesspool to septic. There's no way the appraiser knows that. He's like, whoa, okay. Brand new roof. He couldn't see the roof. It was a single story home. You couldn't see the roof. Loved knowing that. New air conditioning units, they were less than a year old. He loved knowing how old the AC was. So it totally brought up the value of the property. So don't be shy about pointing out things to the appraiser that aren't readily visible. All right, quiet time, hurry up and wait. Buyers prepare to move, select property management company or learn about tenant laws, select insurance company, consider a home buyer's policy. Sellers agents prepare to move, tell our sellers to prepare to move, have agreed to repairs done. Helping our sellers getting those repairs done, right? Hiring a contractor or a handyman, whatever it might be needed. Prepare to have the property cleaned, yard work done, and pet treatment. So cleaning, I'm just working with someone who just went through a whole thing of they contract did not call for professional cleaning. If you don't call for professional cleaning, it is likely you're going to have an issue at closing. The cleaning, the depth of the cleaning and the quality of the cleaning doesn't change because somebody said, oh, I don't want a professional cleaning. The seller is going to do the cleaning themselves. That doesn't mean they get to like not clean so well. So an empty house, as some of us know, is much harder to clean and takes far more time than a regular house, right? It's a big deal. So I encourage you to encourage your clients to accept professional cleaning. It is, and you know, from a seller's standpoint, you know, some of them are cheap and they don't want to spend the money, and you go, believe me, you do not want to be cleaning this house after you've moved out and gone through all the stress you're going to go through. This is not what you want to be doing. Save yourself that horrible experience and spend the $1,000 and get it done professionally. It's so worth it, right? Yeah. Wait, I said that. All right. Later discovered information. What if we have some of that? The later discovered information, we need to bring that up, right? As a listing agent, as soon as you learn of an issue, email to accept is acceptable or an amendment, whichever way you want to do it. The buyer's aid, we just need to state clearly what the remedies are that the seller is going to undertake. And the buyer's agent notify immediately, right? If you've got a home inspection and during the home inspection you learn that there's a whole bunch of dry rot that nobody noticed before, and this is pretty significant, you can, if the contract is written out to say 15 days, that your buyer has 15 days, which is how we template our contracts, right? You can just send an email to the other agent and say, we just opened the seller's disclosure I-344. Oh, I'm so confused on these paragraph numbers. The 15 days are starting now. The moment the buyer finds out is when those days start. If you've got a different number in that number of days, if it says 10 days, then you need to amend the seller's disclosure statement. And once you've submitted an amendment to the seller's disclosure, then the clock starts ticking when the other party is notified. It's a little weird that our contract does that, has that little nuance. So what's the lesson? Oh, just always do an amendment. And just, you know, just do an amendment to the seller's disclosure. It doesn't matter whether the buyer submits it or the seller submits it. Either one can amend the contract, right? Amend the seller's disclosure. And then you're going to have to figure out what does the buyer want to do, and you can negotiate if it's a big repair that's needed, right? You can negotiate again. Hopefully there's enough time in that period. Gesundheit. All right, and that takes us to the last of our communication process, of our escrow process for our clients. And I think that takes us back to the seller. So the seller, page 4, the long one, 2 weeks prior to close of escrow, get very busy again. You're going to receive the termite inspection. If treatment is called for, I'll schedule a tenting or treatment. with you and the termite company. For a single family residence, you're gonna need to cut down shrubs and plants near the structure and arrange for cleanup after the treatment. I built that in there because it doesn't say that anywhere. Nowhere does it talk about in our contract what the consequence of the tenting is and what the seller's responsibility is. So again, a good thing to bring up. For single family residents, receive the survey. In the event of an encroachment, the buyer will instruct escrow and us what they wish to have done, either an encroachment agreement or removal of the encroachment. If something is to be removed, I will assist you with hiring the right person to do the work. If an encroachment agreement is needed, you and I can contact the neighbor and I will work with escrow to have that document prepared. And escrow does that pretty quickly, but yes, the seller does need to talk to the neighbor and see if they can agree. And oftentimes they don't like the neighbor and we end up getting involved, right? Having to knock on the neighbor's door, but it usually works out. We must obtain the neighbor's agreement as they must sign the document, and we must obtain the buyer's consent of the document before it's signed and recorded. And it gets recorded with the sale so that it's in place once the buyer takes over. Be prepared to move completely out of the property 7 days before close of escrow. Why 7? What time is the cleaner going to arrive? 8 a.m. On which day? 6 days prior to closing, right? Because our final walkthrough is 5 days prior to closing. If you've got a cleaner that says, oh, I need 2 days in this house, this is going to take me, you know, there's 2 of us, but it's going to take us more than 1 day. Okay, now you got to get out 8 days before, because a cleaner can't clean with all that furniture in there, right? We need to clean the floors, do everything. So that's part of the juggle we have to manage when we're the listing agent. Be prepared to move completely out. Cleaning will usually take 2 days for a home with a yard or 1 day for a condo. Be sure any agreed to repairs are completed. Again, checking in with your seller about, so did you get that done? Were you able to get, do you need any help from me? Right? We do not want to end up at final walkthrough without the repairs done. Don't let that happen. Let me help you. Yeah. The buyer's final deposit will be wire transferred to escrow 3 to 4 business days before closing, and I will let you know. The pet treatment will be done, if applicable, after the carpets are cleaned, right? In that 3-day recording period. At about 3 to 5 days before closing, the buyer will do a final walkthrough at the property, at which time they expect to see that everything has been cleaned, the personal items are removed, and if applicable, any repairs are completed. Here's a good question. Should the seller be there?
No.
Yeah, I would agree. If you think they'll get along and they're all right, and oftentimes sellers are fine, you know, and the buyers are fine at this point. It's not a bad idea. It is a good time for them to like show them how the light switches work and how this works and, you know, all sorts of things. And I've had parties where that worked great. And then I've had parties where that I'm not going to go there. I'm not bringing them together. No, you should not be there. Right. So that's kind of just my intuition. So whatever you feel is, you want to bring these 2 people together or do you not? Right. That's how you do that. You can always arrange for the buyer and seller to meet on the day of recordation to have that conversation about how does the house work, right? This is a conversation that buyers love. How does this property work? Where's all the little nuances and all the little tricks and things that I need to know about this property? So that is kind of an important transfer. Yeah. And then arrange for the utilities and homeowners insurance to be canceled on closing date, and the buyer will take possession of the property 3 days after the documents have been sent to the Bureau of Conveyances, and I will provide the keys that you give me, right? Getting keys from the seller. Yeah. So there you go. This is the document. Can you let them read some of this on their own? Yes. But do you think it would be valuable to tell your client, I've got this process sheet here for you so that you have a better understanding of what's going on, and helping them to remember, go read that now. Go read this section, right? So like I said, we've emailed them to you as a Word document. You can modify it as you wish. All right, upon conditional loan approval, kind of, we know this stuff. And it's 10 after 1, so I don't want to belabor the point. I'd rather ask for questions at this point. Who's got questions? Survey encroachment. We talked about that. You're either going to have it removed or you're going to get an encroachment agreement. And Escrow does these all the time. They're a template, so they're not hard for an attorney to draw up. They don't take a lot of time. You just need to say, who does it belong to? Who's responsible for fixing it if it goes into disrepair? Who's responsible for if it falls down, and can it be rebuilt or not? And if it can be rebuilt, can it be rebuilt where it is, or does it need to be moved? Those are really the key elements of an encroachment agreement. It takes an attorney 6 pages to say that, but so as long as we tell them all that stuff, it gets drawn up pretty quickly. Questions? This is the rest of this, this. After closing, complete your file, including all correspondence and all documents. Mark your listing sold, get paid, and get testimonials right away. Put your clients on an anniversary drip so that in 2 weeks you call them and you say, how's the new house? How are you feeling? Right? How's it going? Or drop by. Once a year, every year, you're going to send them a little anniversary notice. Congratulations, you've been in the house for 3 years, right? Are you ready to move yet? No. And then a gift, right? We all have different ways of how to gift our clients. I love putting a bottle of champagne in the fridge and an orchid on the kitchen counter just to start it out as a nice kind of entry when they come in.
Okay.
And then I might give them if it's a fixer-upper, I might give them a card for Home Depot, or or give them a restaurant gift, or donation to their favorite charity. So many things. Yeah, rekeying the house. I've done that numerous times. Giving people the gift of rekeying, like, oh my God, we're going to need to, we don't feel comfortable with all these keys that might be out there. We want to have our own set of keys. We want to make sure they're new and unique, and so that there aren't any keys. And I might just say, you know what, I'll take care of that for you. I'm going to gift you rekeying the entire property. So I will give you brand new keys when you come in. And I have the guy meet me at 8 o'clock in the morning on recordation, and we rekey the property, right? Yeah. All right. That's it, guys. I went over 10 minutes. My apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marion. Fantastic as always.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.
Every day.
It's for your help, my dear.
Of course. Thank you for having this class. Are we speaking to anyone?
No.
Oh,
No.